Alrighty, welcome back everyone to part 2 of my top 5 characters in Genshin. Last episode, we went over the premier DPS units, and as promised, I'm gonna list you the top 5 best supports in the game, based on my humble opinion anyway. Just a moment though, before we go further, this video is sponsored by Manscaped. For some reason, July is the month of hair products apparently. As I'm sure all of us guys know, there's hair in more places than just our head, unfortunately. On the bright side, Manscaped has the perfect set of tools and liquid formulations for the big 3 odor zones: your body, your booty, and the family jewels. They actually sent a bunch of stuff to me that I want to show you, the important one being the lawnmower, which actually is convenient since my current electric razor was getting kind of old. This is Manscaped's 4th generation electric waterproof trimmer with advanced skin-safe technology so you don't accidentally cut yourself while shaving. It has a wireless charging system with an LED light showing just how much battery you have left, and it lasts for roughly 90 minutes at full charge. You can go a while before you have to dock it again. Alongside that, we have the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver Ball Toner Spray. My god, these names. Self-explanatory, the deodorant takes care of any smell you might have, while the toner spray is good for keeping your skin from getting too irritated. For all the gents out there, if you feel ballsy enough in trying this out, you get a little extra drip with your perfect package, a travel bag, and anti-chafing boxer briefs. If you're interested, feel free to head on over to manscaped.com and get 20% off with free international shipping, plus 2 free gifts when you use the promo code VARS or use my link in the description. Thanks again to Manscaped for sponsoring the video. It was quite an experience to say the least. But for now, let's get back into it. The formatting for this episode will be more or less the same as the DPS video, but with a different set of criteria. As I'm sure you're well aware, supports will be trickier to rate on account of there being a lot more factors that influence their performance. For damage dealers, there are a good number of things to consider, such as the kind of elemental damage they do, or if their pressure is best applied in single combat or against a large cluster of mobs. But altogether, it boils down to how much damage they can do and how accessible that damage is. Right now, supports are like that as well to an extent. They're only really being evaluated on the basis of how much they amplify the main DPS's output by essentially contributing their own damage through them. Even so, with how current prevailing wisdom goes about structuring parties around 1 damage dealer and 3 supports, there's a lot more nuance in their usage, as you're building the supports for the DPS and they have to work in tandem with each other as well. Adding on to that, the class operates in a number of different ways. Damage-oriented supports are commonly referred to as sub-DPS in light of how the bulk of their supportive capabilities are from their own elemental skills and bursts without being the party leader, so to speak. Other supports provide their team with stat boosts with the intent of increasing the main DPS's own damage output. Then we have our defensive supports, the ones who focus on maintaining the survival of the party, ultimately leading to more damage in that you don't have to be concerned about your health. Circumstances play a big role in determining what characters are the best, so if we're being pedantic about it, the obvious answer for this video would be it depends. That being said, there's a very clear line in the sand for the ones who stand above all others. Usually they're able to cover a lot of bases, and I mean a lot of bases. With this in mind, I actually want to start with 2 honorable mentions. I know I didn't have proper explanations for Xiao and Ayato in the last episode, but it's important for supports, since the reason for why they don't make the cut ties back to the whole thing about circumstance rather than doing damage less efficiently. So let's start with Diona. In terms of crowd support, she's by far the best when it comes to cost effectiveness. A cheap 4-star unit who provides a healthy mixture of offensive and defensive enhancements, either of which you can prioritize to make her more of an attack or healing oriented support. Assuming you're making at least some kind of effort to dodge hard hitting enemy attacks, the shield from Icy Paws is strong enough to hold between uses, especially with the cooldown reset. But to supplement your bottom line even more, Signature Mix damages all enemies caught in it with cryo damage while healing all friendly entities at the same time. Alongside her base effects, Diona has a few other ways to juice up your party with her passive talents and constellations, most notably her final one, a complimentary 200 elemental mastery. All in all, she's a very well-rounded support who does a little bit of everything. What prevents her from being in the top 5 though is primarily her constellations. While the persistent cryo application helps a lot for chain freeze, the main damage bonus Diona gives you is from her C6. Being a 4-star, that's not too difficult to accomplish if you're wishing on an event Bennett that happens to feature her, but it's a cost nonetheless. Besides that, she's a jack of all trades, master of none. To her credit, being a jack of all trades support is way better than being a jack of all trades DPS, which is why she's an honorable mention. Up next, we have Venti. In all honesty, he really should be in the top 5. He's one of the cheapest 5-star units in the game, requiring no constellations and making perfect use of several 4-star bows very efficiently, most notably the Stringless. Wind's Grand Ode as an ability would be in contention for one of the strongest elemental bursts in the game. And having said that, I just came up with an idea to make a tier list of every elemental burst in the game, so if you want to see that, let me know in the comments down below. Back on topic. To this day, it's a fantastic ultimate. Thing is, that's really all you can say about Venti. He has one job. He does that one job really freaking well, and that said job happens to cover a lot of bases. But in situations where that one job isn't applicable, he struggles to do much else. In a way, he's the opposite of Diona. Diona can do a lot of things and cover a lot of situations, she's just not the best option at them. Venti's only good for one thing, but when it comes to that one thing, he's 10 times better than everyone else at it. I'm not kidding when I say his elemental burst alone carries you through any floor in Spiral Abyss with enemies that are spread out everywhere. Depending on what weapon you give him, Venti can either be geared towards each tornado doing massive damage or getting tornadoes out more frequently. But yeah, he's kind of a one-trick pony. The other animal support beats him out in consistency and flexibility. So those are the 2 honorable mentions for this video, and by process of elimination, I'm sure you guys know what the top 5 will be. As a reminder, just because someone didn't make the list doesn't mean they're not good. Spoiler alert, Xiangling isn't on it. She was supposed to be another honorable mention, but I can only give that spot to 2 others. If I listed every top tier support in Genshin, this video would be an hour long. So all of you Xiangling lovers out there, I love her too, I just don't have any more room. Anyways, let's start with everyone's beloved bad luck magnet, and as usual, this is in no particular order. Bennett's an interesting character, and a fine example of an accidental masterpiece. I seriously doubt Hoyo ever intended for him to be this out of control given the way his kit was designed. Similarly to Venti, Bennett has only one job, but he does that job so ridiculously well that he effectively brute forces his way into a lot of parties, courtesy of his burst, Fantastic Voyage. On a moderate cooldown and a modest energy cost, it's a splash of pyro damage that leaves an imprint on the ground in a large area. Friendlies standing in the area are continuously affected by pyro for better or worse, and regenerate health every second until they reach 70%. Additionally, while at 70 or above, they gain bonus attack equal to up to Bennett's base attack. If you have Constellation 1 unlocked, the attack bonus is further increased by 20% of his base attack and is granted unconditionally regardless of your health. Provided he's using a weapon with an extremely high base attack, Bennett's ultimate has the potential to easily boost your standing member's attack by over 1,000. Moreover, he belongs to the element that benefits from this kind of buff the most, Pyro. So ever since the game's release, the community has been divided on whether or not his final constellation Fire Vengeance with me works to his benefit or detriment, as it runs the risk of being counterproductive for characters who don't want to be infused with Pyro. Personally, I think the pros outweigh the cons. Not only does Fantastic Void heal you, but the sheer offensive augmentation it grants makes it one of the best abilities for overall DPS, even if you're not using the pyro damage boost. Also, besides the weapon, Bennett is arguably the cheapest support in the game. You literally need nothing else but high base attack and that's it. Not even crit damage, elemental mastery, what have you. Energy recharge would be preferable, but otherwise he gets everything done at base. Constellation 1 is a must-have, but as a 4-star that shouldn't be too difficult. The only downside to him is that he lives and dies by Fantastic Voyage, as his own damage contribution is essentially non-existent unless you have really optimized artifacts. Additionally, if you're up against a boss that runs around a lot, it can be difficult to stay within the circle for its entire duration, and that tends to happen more often than not, which is why his consistency isn't that good. Then again, it would be extremely broken if his ultimate wasn't position dependent and followed you around. Okay, hi, so this is post-editing Vars. I'm just chiming in because I understand that what I said regarding Bennett's consistency might be a little misleading, so let me clarify something. I rated him 3 stars in consistency, and I even said that his consistency isn't very good, even though that's technically not correct. So Bennett as a character is extremely consistent, one of the most consistent in the game, that's why he's so good. I wrote the script a while back, but I think at the time the reason why I rated him in lower consistency is primarily because of Fantastic Voyage being the only thing he's really able to do. Now I'm aware of snapshotting in which you can attach the buff power of Fantastic Voyage onto a character's main attack like Xiangling's Pyronado, so looking back I should have rated him a bit higher in consistency given that Fantastic Voyage's position dependence isn't really that big of a deal in practice. But I just want to clear that up before we continue because I know for a fact there will be people in the comment section asking me about why I rated it so lowly when it actually wasn't. And yeah, that's gonna be it, so I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. Up next we have Xingqiu, the other 5-star without actually being a 5-star. You may notice I rated him all 4 stars, and that's because out of every support in the game, he's arguably the most well-rounded. Unlike Bennett, who pumps up his team's damage output through free attack, Xingqiu provides the damage himself, among other things. His Elemental Burst Rain Cutter strikes in tandem with your active member's normal attacks, transforming your main DPS into a 1-person Hydro Reactor, and with that comes any Hydro-related benefits you can think of. Dilu, Kutao, and Yoimiya can spam Vaporize for days. Ayaka perma-freezes, Raiden Shogun gets free Electrocharge, so on and so forth. What makes him so effective is how much damage the Elemental Burst actually does. It wouldn't be uncommon for him to dish out tens of thousands with each round of blades, and the swords attached to your active character following you wherever you go. Alongside the follow-up attacks, you have super armor, damage reduction, and a small bit of healing. It's just an overall very consistent spread, and with enough energy recharge, Xingqiu can replenish his ultimate before it even comes off cooldown, although said cooldown is quite long at 20 seconds. Admittedly, he's a tad more costly than Bennett. As a sub DPS who relies heavily on reactions, you need to have a solid combination of energy recharge, elemental mastery, attack, crit rate, and crit damage. It's not as brain-dead easy to gear him up. Of the Raiden national team's members, Xingqiu requires the most amount of energy recharge, around 230 to 250 ideally, though Sacrificial Sword can alleviate that somewhat. Furthermore, while C2 is the important one, C6 is where he really shines, meaning you need 7 copies of him. Again, as a 4-star, that's not impossible even for free-to-play, but it's important to make note of all the same. Overall, he's a fantastic investment and in my opinion slightly overtakes Bennett in use cases. Bennett offers a staggering DPS boost to his team but fails to bring any pyrocentric reactions to the table, as in he doesn't help you chain vaporize or melt. Xingqiu on the other hand is a one-stop shop for hydro reactions, doesn't matter what. But I gave him 4 stars for consistency, namely due to how long and how expensive his burst cooldown and energy cost are. If you don't have sufficient enough battery, he does have a tendency to jam your burst rotation every now and then. Our third member of the list is actually Genshin's newest addition, or whenever you see this video, I'm not sure when Hazel comes out. Anyways, we have Yelan. The simplest way I can describe her is that she is to Xingqiu what Ayaka is to Ganyu. They're both top-class Hydro supports but for slightly different reasons, even if what they do is almost identical in practice. Yelan forfeits any defensive utility with the exception of her outstanding mobility in exchange for pure damage. Depth Clarion Dice shares a lot of the same functions as Rain Cutter. Normal attacks are followed by a flurry of Hydro damage, only instead of a varying number of strikes, it's 3 every single time, just enough to reset the internal cooldown. The overall damage output is noticeably higher as well, but it does require significant investment. Additionally, I would argue Yelan's consistency is better than Xingqiu's for 2 reasons, while worse for 2 other reasons. 1. Her elemental burst is a lower cooldown and energy cost. 2 seconds and 10 less energy may not sound like a lot, but trust me when I say you can feel the difference, at least I can. 2. Lingering Lifeline has an extremely low cooldown of 10 seconds compared to Fatal Rain Screen having more than double at 21. Constellation 1 allows you to use it twice without needing a sacrificial weapon. However, Yelan's Hydro application isn't as frequent, so her reaction chaining may not come out as uniformly, and her lack of super armor leaves you open to being staggered, which you'll have to supplement elsewhere, so there are pros and cons to both. Speaking of Lingering Lifeline, it's actually my new favorite elemental skill. It does a crap ton of damage while knocking all tagged enemies to your standing location, regenerates a ton of energy, and the cherry on top, it lets you travel at almost twice the speed of a sprint without consuming stamina, and unlike Sayu's Roly-Poly skill, it regenerates stamina, effectively meaning Yelan improves your travel speed far greater than even Animo units who are supposed to specialize in that kind of thing. Would I go so far as to say she's objectively better than Xingqiu? No, she's a 5-star, Xingqiu is 4. The former is inherently more expensive. Ideally, you would want 2 copies of Yelan for C1 to maximize efficiency. For free-to-plays, I would say she's entirely optional, provided your Xingqiu is well geared, and your money would be better spent on the other 2 5-stars on this list. That said, those who can afford Yelan should most certainly go after her for Lingering Lifeline's mobility if nothing else. Second to last, but once again in no particular order, is an elder statesman of the supporting world, emphasis on elder, Geodaddy Zhongli. Unlike other traditionally powerful supports who focus on damage aspects, Zhongli offers, well, he says it the best.
Stabilize.
Defensive support isn't as prioritized as offensive in light of the lack of need for it, so anyone who solely does that is usually rated a lot worse. That is, unless they offer something more. Even so, Zhongli provides defense on such an insurmountable level that entire memes were spun around his ability to strip Genshin Impact of what little difficulty it had to offer. With Dominus Lapidus, if you have over 30,000 base health on Zhongli, his Jade Shield is strong enough to allow you to basically face tank anything in the game while augmenting your damage at the same time, as it reduces elemental and physical resistances of all nearby enemies. If you have C2 on him, casting his elemental burst grants another Jade Shield, so if you space out your skill and burst times, you might as well throw away your entire inventory of dishes cause you'll unironically take 0 damage. Zhongli's elemental skill alone would be more than enough to solidify his position as the best tank support in the game. Surprisingly, however, his damage output isn't half bad, especially for a tank support. Both his auto attacks and elemental skill do increase damage based on his HP, while Planet Befall, along with its insane base damage, does even more based on a third of his max health, and at rank 10 it also stuns all enemies for 4 seconds, allowing you to do whatever the hell you want. It also has one of the lowest energy costs and cooldowns I've ever seen, at 40 and 12 seconds respectively. Healing supports generally aren't sought after at the moment since your team would lose too much damage than it's worth to have that regeneration. Barbara and Chi-Chi suffer from this issue, Zhongli does not. By no means am I saying his damage contribution is comparable to characters like Bennett or Xingqiu, but it's enough to justify his insane durability and crowd control pressure. Unfortunately, itemizing him in one direction causes you to lose out on efficiency in the other. Unless you have Staff of Homa, you'll be forced to choose between either damage augmentation or shielding strength. True to his nonchalant disregard for money, getting the best of both worlds is gated behind a massive paywall. Final spot on this list goes to Kazuha, the character with the most heavily requested rerun probably of all time. As mentioned earlier, Venti is a phenomenal support in his own right, but a lot of his overall performance is dependent on whether or not the scenario fits into his equation. Kazuha's highs don't reach as far, but they don't need to, because his lows are effectively non-existent. While his personal damage ceiling is nowhere near Venti's, he's able to convert his own elemental mastery into unconditional bonus elemental damage for his entire party, while still gaining the full benefits of elemental mastery through Swirl, the reaction most heavily influenced by EM if I remember, thus leading to an overall damage increase by proxy in the same fashion as Bennett. The extent of Kazuha's supportive value isn't represented by his damage increase alone though, it's his unrivaled consistency. For almost every character in the game, even the ones I've given 4 and 5 stars to for consistency, that consistency has a chance to falter in some way. Not for this guy. His elemental skill pulls all enemies towards its immediate location, then his elemental burst creates a huge dome-shaped area with plenty of room to move around in with periodic swirl damage and the aforementioned elemental boost. Bear in mind the cooldown of his abilities, 6 or 9 seconds for his E and 15 for his Q. Also, if you have C1, the base cooldown on his skill decreases while resetting completely on ultimate cast, letting you use it twice. And if you get his Constellation too, his already considerable damage increase magnifies even further. The guy just does everything for his team: crowd control, battery, damage boost, reactions, etc. And due to the nature of his abilities, he synergizes with almost every other support in the game. He's by far one of the best units in Genshin period. Top 3, and I will die on this hill. Sadly, he's not perfect, no unit is. Out of everyone on this list, he's also the most expensive and the hardest to gear up. Good elemental mastery swords are few and far between. Your only choices are Iron Sting and Freedom Sworn. Unless I'm wrong, and lately I actually have been when it comes to numbers, Alley Flash and Dark Iron Sword aren't the most applicable to him. Then of course he needs a lot of elemental mastery. A lot of elemental mastery. Ideally you should be aiming for anywhere between 800 to 1000. Plus you need the full set effect of Iridescent Venerer. Kazuha is a costly investment. The payoff is worth its weight in gold for sure, but I'd be lying if I said he wasn't expensive. Okay, we're done. My throat hurts. Too much talking, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. Xiangling mains, I love you. Please don't kill me for not mentioning her. Anyways, feel free to share your thoughts on this list in the comments down below, whether you agree or disagree. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my previous episode on the best DPS characters. Also, if you want to see that tier list video on every elemental burst and skill, let me know in the comments. But until next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.